It's amazing as we watch the news week by week how over time events trend toward the outcome set out in the scriptures, many times against all odds. That is certainly the case this week with the issue of the settlements in the area of the West Bank. Two other areas which could be referred to as the King of the North and the King of the South are of great interest this week also. A regathering to the mountains of Israel. A few years ago, who would have imagined that the Israeli government would be authorizing new housing to be built within the city of Hebron? The Jewish communities or settlements in the West Bank are a worldwide issue, often discussed at the United Nations. When Israel has decided to build, there has been massive world pressure to stop Israel building, pressure from the European Union, the United States, and many other countries. During the Obama years, there was a building freeze in the West Bank. No building at all. Everyone knows that if Israel keeps building Jewish communities in the West Bank, the idea of a Palestinian state there is unachievable. In fact, many think that this is already the case. Yet due to the administration changes in the United States and the current government in Israel, building is actually resuming against all odds. The Israeli government even issued building permits for 31 housing units in the Jewish community of Hebron, marking the first time construction has been approved in the Flashpoint West Bank city in 15 years. This is quite amazing. It seems to be true that due to political reasons, Netanyahu is inflating the numbers. Quite a number of those in Israel who support the building say that the building is not near enough. Yet the change is significant. In 1868, John Thomas, in his work entitled Eureka, wrote, "There will have been a considerable gathering of Israelites upon the mountains of Israel before the invasion of the country by Gog and his capture of Jerusalem." This appears from the Spirit's address to Gog in the 8th verse of this chapter. In this place he says, "In the latter years thou shalt come into the land that is brought back from the sword and gathered out of many people, against the mountains of Israel, which have been continually waste, but it is brought forth out of the nations, and they shall dwell safely, all of them." John Thomas was expounding the prophecy of Ezekiel chapter 38, and penned the obvious and plain conclusion that there would be a considerable amount of regathered Israelites on the mountains of Israel when Gog would invade. After a quick look at the modern state of Israel, it is quite obvious that in the major cities, aside from Jerusalem, are on the coastal plain and not the mountains of Israel. This would indicate the focus of Gog's invasion is what today is known as the West Bank, rather than the cities of the coastal plain. It is significant that today, the West Bank communities are a controversial world issue. Today, as building resumes in these communities, the work continues of preparing a people regathered to the mountains of Israel. Man may try and stop this work. Man may issue building freezes and try to stop the Israelites being regathered. But if he does, he will ultimately fail. The King of the North. The prophecy of Ezekiel 38 speaks of an invasion of Israel in the latter days after there has been a regathering from the nations. The principal invader is from the uttermost parts of the north, from Israel. There are other powers that are with him. Ezekiel says Persia, Ethiopia, and Libya with them, all of them with shield and helmet. This week there was a significant visit to Syria of Iran's army chief. The Times of Israel reports Iran, Syria pledged joint effort to counter Zionist American schemes, and that visiting Damascus, Tehran's army chief signs a memo of understanding, promising increased coordination between militaries on intelligence and technology. So Syria and Iran are working together against the Jewish state of Israel and America. Iran is modern-day Persia. Today, Syria is a weak power propped up by the northern power of Rosh, or Russia, who is a guard to them. Ezekiel 38 verse 2 says, "Son of man, set thy face toward Gog, of the land of Magog, the prince of Rosh, Meshech, and Tubal, and prophesy against him." Persia or Iran is with them, says the prophet Ezekiel in verse 5. This is steadily completing the picture as shown to the prophet. A headline from another analysis on the Times of Israel regarding recent rocket fire into Israel from Syria sums this up. In Syrian barrage, a confident message signed by Iran and Russia. The fire that hit Israel Saturday was likely no accident, especially as Assad is riding high with the help of his friends. There is a clear Russia, Iran, and Syrian alliance in the north, threatening Israel just as Ezekiel prophesied. The king of the south. Meanwhile, to the south, Secretary of State Tillerson is in the Middle East as the U.S. seeks a Saudi-Iraq axis against Iran. Tillerson is Trump's point man on an ambitious mission to win over Iraq and counter Tehran's growing influence in the region, reported by Times of Israel. This is the very spirit of the words of Ezekiel 38, where the prophet says, Sheba and Dedan and the merchants of Tarshish with all the young lions thereof shall say unto thee, Gog, art thou come to take a spoil? Saudi Arabia is around the area of ancient Sheba and Dedan. It is fascinating that the merchant power of the United States is teaming up with them to counter the influence of Iran. At the same time, because of Iran, Israel has improving ties with the Sunni Arab states. A headline from an analysis on the Times of Israel reads, For Israel, concern over Iran leads to better ties with Arab states. Here there is a developing southern alliance, including Saudi Arabia and the Gulf states, the United States and Britain, which is more friendly to Israel, exactly as Ezekiel prophesied. This week, then, there are 3 areas where we continue to march steadily to the picture of the prophecy of Ezekiel 38. First, that the considerable gathering of Israelites on the mountains of Israel continues to grow. When Gog invades these communities, the Almighty's anger comes up in his face, and Gog is ruined on the mountains of Israel. Second, Syria and Iran, backed by Russia, are working together to counter U.S. influence in the region. And thirdly, Saudi Arabia continues to work with the United States to counter Iran, which is pushing them to friendly ties with Israel. These signs show us how soon the return of Christ, of the Lord Jesus Christ, could be, the deliverer of Israel. Join us again next week, God willing, for more Bible in the News.